keep talking about the AngularJS. We briefly introduced it last class, and let's dig into a little deeper. Again, we'll start from scratch, right? As if we don't know anything, we'll start from way at the beginning, and let's build a small application, at least on the front end. Again, with the caveat that we don't have a server yet, we don't have a database yet, right? So this is all running on the browser. Nothing is being persisted. And eventually, right, perhaps next week, we'll start connecting it to a server, right, and getting results from a server, right? So let's see. Let's start our editor, and let's open up the website that we're working on, the essentials, and in there, I believe we had already started a directory to hold our AngularJS. Yeah, there it is. So we already had begun playing around with Angular. Let's look at this. Was this our template? Yeah, this was kind of like our hello world template for Angular. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to close the old one, and this one I'm going to call 010. Right, so it's a brand new day, and I'm just going to take out some stuff from here. Let's see our application. Let's build a small let's see a movie application, right, where you have listing of our favorite movies, right? And I can add, it's a library of my favorite movies, right? And I can add stuff to this. So let's see. This is hitting another. If you remember, we install angular.min.js. That is the framework, right? That's the only file you need. There are many other files that you might want to add depending on features, right? AngularJS has become pretty big, and they split it up into various JS files, right? But this is a core, right? This is a core library that we need. Next week we'll add an additional one that will allow us to do routing, right? It will allow us to handle navigation, right? As you navigate from one page to the next, right? Typically, the way you handle that in a browser is that you have anchors, right? And anchors refer to other pages, correct? And those pages are actually, they go to the server. The server either just gives you the file or calculates the file on the fly with ASPX, right? And that's what you get over here. Instead, since this is a single page application, we never leave the page, right? But we still want to be able to navigate from one page to the next. So how do you do that, staying in the same page? Well, so that routing mechanism that we'll introduce next week will allow us to do that have the same behavior of being able to navigate amongst pages, but staying in the same page without any reloads, okay? So we'll look at that next week. Right now, we're just going to keep just one page. Let's build a simple movie database. Well, not a database, right? Movie library. And so we'll call this our application, our movie app, okay? Movie app, movies. And that's what we're going to call our app here, right? These don't have to match, remember, right? These don't have to match. If you remember, where did we download this from? We downloaded from Angular.org, right? AngularJS.org, right? That's where we downloaded it from. We said download, and we downloaded this one, the stable version, right? We downloaded that one. And there were a couple other things that I downloaded. I downloaded the map, just because the browser was was asking for it, so I just downloaded that. What else? And so we're going to put our data, our application here in moviesapp.js. So we need that file here somewhere. I'll create it here. I'll say add new JavaScript, and I'll call it, what is it? Moviesapp.js. Right, and it's currently empty. And we have a controller. So right now we're just going to have one controller. Next week we'll start talking about many controllers, right? Each controller either it will be responsible for their own piece of the application, right, or its own real estate, right, in a page. Right now, we'll just keep it simple, just one controller, right? And I'm just going to call it movie controller, right? And so this is a simple movie. Okay, and that's it. What else? What else? I'll just keep the hello just to make sure that indeed we are hitting it. Let's see. I'll just have to leave the hello there, and I'll close that div. We might want to bring Bootstrap into this, so it looks somewhat acceptable. Yeah. So let's bring Bootstrap in here. So we have link, and it's, where is it? I believe I believe I have one under. No, actually CSS. No, up one further, CSS, and I think I have. Oh, I don't. What? I don't have Bootstrap there. Of course, I had Bootstrap there. No, I don't. Okay, let's bring Bootstrap in there. I believe I have it in downloads, and under downloads I have Bootstrap in here. Okay, I have a distribution, and I'll copy. Let's see, I'll copy the CSS, and I'll paste it where? Let's see, under essential CSS. I'll just paste it in here. I might also need the font. Let me bring the font to, let's go up one. Let me copy the font, and I'll just paste it here. There's fonts. What else? All right, so I have that. I'm going to refresh my application so it sees it. There it is. There they are. Now I can bring it in. / there's Bootstrap. There it is. Now, and it's a style sheet. All right. What else do we need? That's it. I'll just bring Bootstrap. Now that I have Bootstrap, I can add a class here as being the container. This will look, somewhat acceptable, right? Somewhat pretty. So let's run this. Let's see what it looks like. There it is. Simple movie library. Notice that the font is Bootstrap font, right? It looks pretty. Notice that there's hello and the literal, because that control doesn't yet exist, right? The app doesn't yet exist. So nothing has happened, though. The app hasn't been instantiated. The controller hasn't been instantiated. So Angular does not have control over this page just yet, okay? So it prints out the hello literally, okay? So let's look at our movie app. So in here, what we're going to do is we're going to create the app, right? So to do that, if you remember, we created a module. We say Angular module, the name of the module, and anything that it depends on. Right now, it doesn't depend on any other module. Later on next week, we will start depending on other modules, right? Like the routing module, right? That allows us to navigate between pages. Next week, we'll add that. What else? So now that we have instantiated an application, all right, these have to map, right? This matches that, the name of the application, right? Now that we have an instance of the application, we can start adding controllers. We just have one controller, but we can have many controllers, right? If we have many pages, each page would have its own controller, okay? Even within a page, you might have several controllers, right? If you want to divide it, right? If you have different features, typically it's per feature, right? You have a controller per different feature that you might have, right? And each controller has its own scope. They're responsible for a subset of the application or subset of a page, okay? A subset of a feature, and you usually break it up into features. Okay, so let's create the controller. So it says app.controller. The name of the controller, and the controller, we called it movie controller. There it is. And the function that will be used, this is a constructor that will be used to instantiate my controller. And in here, we'll say alert, hello from movie controller. Right, so if we refresh this, there it is. So hello from movie controller. So the controller was instantiated, right? And notice that the curly brackets is gone because now the controller has access to that. It looked at the variable, it says, oh, that's a variable. It's part of the template, right? It wants to be replaced by something in the model. I don't have a value for hello, right? So I'll just replace it with blank. Right? I'll do my best. I don't have a value for that variable, and I'll just replace it with blank. We can start sending data to the front end. Well, in this case, it's all front end, right? But we can start sending data to the view, right? This is a controller. The HTML is the view, right? And these guys talk to one another through a magical object called the scope, right? And it has to have exactly those 6 characters. Okay. What the Angular mechanism, what it does is that it looks for this. If it sees the name of this variable, it will inject this service, right? The scope service into your function. It will call your function if it sees that you're asking for it, right? This is very, very similar to what we do in server-side development with inversion of control. Injecting instances of objects, right? Spring MVC does this, right? Certainly, the .NET framework does this as well, right? You can inject things just by instantiating it. Typically, in those frameworks, you have to annotate, right? You have to use special annotations, right? Over here, what we do is that instead of annotations, the variable has to be that variable name. Okay, so that's the way it's annotated. It's that variable name. There is a problem of having to use exactly that variable name. There's a problem. The problem is that typically these frameworks, if you notice, these frameworks are minimized. See that? They're minimized. And so your JS file, typically before going into production, usually, right, will also be minified, right? And what happens when JavaScript, well, any code is minified, is that variable names are replaced, right, with small variable names, A, B, C, D, right? So no longer injection works. Injection doesn't work anymore, right? Because right, the variable name is now no good, right? So the framework now says, well, you didn't ask for scope. You have variables A, B, C. I don't know those variables, right? So I don't know what to give you. So to handle that, you will often see, right, in the documentation for Angular, this works fine the way it is, right? But this syntax here, the way it's done here, is not immune to minification. Okay, minification will destroy this implementation, right? It will not work after minified. So you will see in many documentation in Angular, you'll see things such as this. You have an array, right? You have an array, and then any arguments you're expecting, you declare them as in an array. You declare them as the literal string is a literal string. Minification does not touch literals, right? If it's in a quote, right, it says, oh, okay, it's a literal string. I can't touch that. It's not a variable. It's a literal string. I won't touch that, right? So now this mechanism, this array, right, what Angular does, it says, oh, okay, this means that there will be a function at the end, the last argument, the last element in this array, I'm expecting it to be a function. And these arguments, right, are going to be these arguments. Right? What are you? So after you minify, if you minify, this becomes A, for instance, right? But it's okay. I have an array, and I know that the first element indicates what do you want for the first argument. You understand that? Right? So this mechanism does survive minification. It says, oh, what do you want for the first argument? Oh, you want scope. Okay, I'll give you scope as the first argument. That makes sense? Right? This is so that your code survives minification. We're not doing any minification, right? We're not doing any minification, so we don't need that. But I just wanted to let you know, in case you start looking at documentation, it says, what are all these arrays and little strings. What is this? Okay, it's to be able to survive minification. Everybody okay? All right. Now that I have the scope, what is the scope? The scope represents any and everything that has an object or things that are not literal. This is literal, right? That is a string, literal. We don't do anything with it, right? We can't do anything to it, right? The controller cannot modify that. jQuery could, right? jQuery can do anything, right? jQuery can go anywhere, right? But here we're following a pattern. We're following a design pattern. Is the MVC pattern, right? There is a model, right? There's a view. There's some kind of template, and the controller feeds the model the data to the view, and then the view renders that view. Yes, this means that it's just little. I want that to be little. Don't touch that. Okay, but anything else, right? Anything else, right? The control can feed data. And these curly brackets are, you know, the equivalent on ASP of using, you know, the pointy bracket %, right? That allows you to, you know, introduce C# or VB, or if you're doing JSPs, then this would be a JSP, right? You could be able to insert things like that, you know, little expressions like that, where you can do expressions that you can evaluate, right? Right. So this is the equivalent of that. But in these over here are for what? For server side, right? This is being calculated and executed on the server, right? Right. Over here, these are being replaced on the client. These are client side templates. Okay. It's just that we copy a lot of the things that we've learned from server side technologies. We're bringing them over to the client side. Everybody okay? All right, so yeah, we declared a variable here, and we can bind it. It is bound to a model. The model doesn't exist. I can feed the data to the front end by just providing data here, right? So I can set this like that. So if I replace, there it is, right? So I am feeding data to the view, and the view just renders it. Everybody okay? All right. So anyway, so let's create a little model here. We want to have a movie database, right? So let's create a simple object that would hold the data, right? Right now it's going to be a hard-coded data, right? A hard-coded model. Presumably this would come from a server, from a database, eventually next week perhaps, right? For now, let's hard-code it, right? And I have movies here, and movies might be an array of objects, and that array of objects might be, you know, title, and your avatar, and then maybe the year, 2009. Maybe it has a plot, you know, some cool blue guys, right? Blue guys reenact. What was that movie that Kevin Costner is better than the Indians? Dancing with Wolves, was it? Was it that Kevin Costner he's found by some Indians and then he becomes better than the Indians? I think it's called Dancing with Wolves. Not now. I have to see. Wolves, yeah, is that right? Yeah, it's Kevin Costner, yeah. So there is a plot here, right? Lieutenant blah, 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 exiled to remote Western Civil War outpost, befriends wolves and Indians, making him an intolerable okay. Yeah, I'll copy that. or Dancing with Wolves, right? So they reenact that movie, right? Dancing with Wolves. It's the same movie, but in extraterrestrial format. Anyway, so I have data. Let's see. So anything else? Let's have another movie. So this is Star Wars, and maybe Star Trek. So it's coming out this year, huh? Coming out this year, Star Wars 7. Okay, and I won't put a plot. We don't know what the plot is. Unknown. Anyway, so this is Star Trek. I don't know. It came out what, 2013, the last one. Citizen. What is your name? Right? Star Trek, and all right. I'll just do 3 movies. All right. So we want to feed this data, right? It's the model. Perhaps this comes from a database, right? And we want to feed it to the front end. Right? So the way we could feed it in is as hey view, here's the data. I'm going to send it to you, right? So I'm going to say movies, and I'll just make it equal to this array, right? So I just sent it to the front end, right? And the front end might want to render that and says, okay, fine. I'm just going to have movies here. If I render that, notice that I get the array. It's the array that the controller sent me, right? And I display it as a little JSON object that I received, right? I don't know what to do with it, so I'm just going to render it literally, okay? What I really want to do here is I like to be able to perhaps iterate over that, right? So perhaps I want to iterate over using a table, right? And I want a template to do that. I want a template on how to render these things. I want to render using, let's do a table body, right? And under the table head, sorry. In the table, well, let's do the table body first. We're going to have a table row. Under the table row, we might have a TD where we want to render what? What do we want to render? The title, right? We want to render the title. We want to render what else? We want to render. We want to render the year, right? We want to render the plot, and what else? A year, plot, about rating. I think this was PG-13. I think these are all PG-13. Right. So year, blah blah, rating, and the plot. All right. That's the template that I want. But I really want to do this for all the elements in that array, right? So I need to iterate over that. For that, I can use ng repeat. That says, okay, you're going to iterate over, right, for every element in movies, right? As you iterate over movies, right, bind each element to a local variable called movie, right? And then each object, right? I want to use that object. I want to use the attributes of each one of those objects, right? Make sense? Right, so if I go into my front end, now this renders as a table, like I was expecting, right? Let's paint this a little bit so it looks a little prettier. So this is table. There it is. So it looks a little prettier, and we can stripe it also so that it's so every other one it highlights, right? It uses a different background color. We can put some headers here. Let's put some headers. So T head, where we have a table row and this table head here. We have the first one is title. What else? Let's see. We have title, year. I think there's 4, right? 4 things. So title. This is year. The rating. And what else? There it is. Okay, so we have something there. Everybody okay? All right, makes sense? All right, so the things that we want to be able to do is introduce more elements to this, right? I want to add movies to this, or I want to remove movies from this library. Let's do. Let's see. What could we do? Let's add something to the library. Okay. Well, let's do something simpler. Let's remove something from the library. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an additional TD at the end with a button, right? That if we click on that button, it removes that object from the array. Okay, how's that? Let's do that. So let's create a button here, button, and I'm going to paint it with the BTN danger, so it's red. Okay. And this is going to be an X. I want an X here, right? So to do an X, I can use an entity times that's an X. There it is. That's an X, right? Or I can use a bootstrap X. That looks better. Let's look at bootstrap. Get bootstrap.com. Am I connected? Yes. Okay. And, right. So let's go to components, and I have here an X somewhere. There it is, a glyphicon. So let's copy that, and I'll use that instead. It looks prettier. So to include that, we're going to use a span class, and we use that class. And now we have, there it is. That X looks a little prettier. Okay, and it also is going to look, all these glyphicons, the width, right, and the look and feel is consistent across all glyphicons. Okay, all right. Let's see. Notice that I added a TD, and it looks. You see this thin line over here? That looks funny, right? That's because I added a column down below in T-body, but I did not add a TH in the header, right? So I'm going to just add that. It's empty. It's a good practice to put non-breaking spaces, right? Whenever you have empty spaces, right? So there it is. Now it doesn't look funny. Okay. So what I want to be able to do is click this, right? And do an event handler like in jQuery, right? You do button, right? .click or something like that, right? So we should be able to do similar things in Angular. The way you do that in Angular is that you go to the button and you say if there is a click, I want to notify a particular function in my controller, right? I want to notify the controller is going to handle all the events, right? All the gestures, the touch, the drags, the clicks, the double clicks, the typing. The controller should handle this, right? So what we're going to do is going to say notify my controller by calling a method called remove movie. Okay, and to do that, we're going to declare an event handler in the controller. We're going to say, okay, well, the scope, meaning the view, has declared a method called. I'm going to link these two worlds, right? Remember, scope is the one who does the linking between the view and the control, right? So I want to link that method that they're calling. I'm going to declare it. It's remove movie, right? And it's a function which is going to be called. I'm going to say, for now, it's just going to say console log remove movie. Oops. Right. So let me inspect and look at the console. Oh, what is it? I must have missed. I'm probably missing some glyphicon thing. Anyway, right. So if I click here, it's not working. Let's refresh. There it is. Remove movie. See that? I'm removing the movie. It's being called. Right. So the link is done. Right. The link is occurring. The event handler is happening. But I need to know which movie are you talking about? Right. Which movie are you removing? There's a couple of ways that we could go about this. One thing that we could do is use the magical object index, right? Which is basically part of the repeat mechanism, right? So that every time you're repeating, right, the loop maintains the index in which you're in, right? Which one am I in? Am I in loop 0, loop 1, loop 2? So we could pass that index. So here we could get the index. We could get the index, and we can display it and see what it is. Okay, so if I click here, notice that it says remove. Oh, undefined. What? I'm missing something. Index movie repeat. Index. Why is it not liking index? All right, I'll have to go to the second way of doing this. The second way of doing this is that you actually pass the object. You actually pass the object that you want to remove. And let's print here. This is the movie, and I'm going to display that movie. Move movie. And I'm going to do console.log And this is the movie that we want to remove. Here it is. So that's the object. See the object that I'm passing? So I clicked on Star Wars, and that's the object that's coming back, right? If I click on this one, I get Star Trek. If I click on the first one, I get Avatar. I get the actual object, right? That is being represented, right, by each iteration. So there's a binding, right? It remembers. You see that? It's iterating. It's generating the HTML, right? And it remembers what object was used to render each piece of the HTML, each portion of the template. That's very cool, right? That it remembers the context in which each template item was created, right? That's pretty cool. Again, copied straight from server side frameworks, right? This is also very common in server side frameworks. All right, now that we have the movie, we can find the movie in the original array. That's the original array, right? That's where all the movies are. I can find out which object is this in, right? I can say the index I can calculate it by saying, hey, scope movies, that's the array, right? What's the index of that movie? Right? Where is that movie in your array? Okay, now that I have the index, I can print the index. All right, that's 0, that's 1, that's 2, right? Now that I have the index, I can very easily just splice out that element from the array, right? And so that's the way we do that. We can say just scope movies. That's the array, right? We're just going to splice, right? Which element do we want to remove? The element at index. And how many elements do we want to remove? Just that one, right? Just one. Okay. And what's going to happen here, right? I'm gonna do this, right? And I'm going to click this, and it removes it. It removes it. I didn't have to tell it to re-render. I didn't have to. Remember, in jQuery, you would have to re-render everything, right? Over here, it's automatic because there is a binding again. There is a double binding between what happens in the UI and what happens in the control. If the control just updates the model, the view says, oh, the model changed, I need to update. Right? So the view says, what happened to the model? Let me look at the latest version of the model. Let me re-update. Notice that it knows that it needs to throw away the old DOM, right? And re-render everything. It maintains the template, right? Very, very powerful. Okay? Very powerful. So just in 2 lines of code, right? In 2 lines of code, right, we were able to just remove and re-update the model. The model generates all these observables, right? All these event handlers on who's listening to what, right? The view is listening to what's happening to the model. The model is listening to what's happening in the view, and there's a double binding over here. That makes sense, right? Very, very cool, right? Okay, we want to be able to add things, right? Let's add now elements, right? Let's create here. Let's see. Let's create a button that will allow us to add a new movie to the array. Okay. To do that, let's see. What we might want to do is create a new row. We need a form, right? So to be able to fill out the form, right? So here's an input field. Here's an input field. I'm going to paint it with Bootstrap so it looks somewhat pretty. I'll use form control, right? So it looks a little nice. Let's see. There's my input field. It takes up the wide as much space as it has the table to give it. So let's create a couple of these for the year, the rating, and the plot. There they are. We have a form up there, and we would need a button, right, for you to click and say yes, add it now, right? So let's see. Let's add here a button, right? And I'll paint it with Bootstrap button, and I'll use green, right? Success. And we want to use a plus sign. Let's go to Bootstrap to get a plus sign. There's a plus sign. Let me grab that class. And we'll do span class. Oops. Right, and let's reload there. There's my plus sign. All right, there's my plus sign. So what I want to be able to do is when you click on that plus sign, I would like to notify the controller that a new movie is being added. Okay, so I'm gonna say ng click. We're gonna say that we're gonna call add movie. Okay, add movie. So that's my new event handler, and my event handler here, I'm going to declare it. It's going to say scope dot add movie function, right? So this is going to be console log. I'm going to say alert, right? Alert add movie. Okay. If I refresh and I click on plus, there it is. Add movie comes up. So it's the link is happening. Yes. So what we want to be able to do is now grab elements from the input field, right, and add it to my array, basically, right? That's what I need to do. And if it works the same way as before of removing, adding it to the array should work the same way. The view should just re-render, right? I don't have to explicitly tell the view to do anything. Right? It'll just re-render. Whatever happens to that array, the view will re-render. Okay. All right. So we need to grab stuff from over here. In jQuery, the way we would do this, right, is that we would either give an ID or a class, right? We would grab the element and then ask the value of that input field, right? That's very low level, right? Angular is much higher level than that. And with the way we do this is that we bind it to a model in the control, right? We have a representation of this in the control. We will bind it and says, well, I'm going to bind this to a variable, and this is going to say, movie.title, right? So presumably there's an object instance movie, right? It's not the same movie, right? It's not the same movie, right? These are two different contexts. This is a local variable in an iteration, whereas this is another movie instance, right? They have nothing to do with one another. And each one of these, right, I'm just going to copy this, and this would be what? The year, the rating, and this would be the plot. So I'm just going to copy. This would be the year, the rating, and the plot. Okay. All right. So that means that that object, right? It is bound just like movies is bound here by just naming it here movies, right? Same thing here. This movie is also bound now to the scope. So I could alert here and say I can alert the scope, right? The movie, right? Because it's an object that the view is creating, right? And it's a double binding, right? Whatever the view declares, the control knows about, right? And whatever the control changes that model, the view re-updates, right? So let's see that. If I click on type something, I click OK. It says that I am getting an object, some kind of object. Let's say that I want the title, right? So if I know this is the title. I click on OK, it says this is the title, right? So yeah, so the control is getting, right, the data, the object. I'm going to create a new object, right? So I'm going to say var new movie. It's going to be the same schema as all the other movies, right? It's going to be what? It's going to be title. Where's it going to grab the title from? From here, right? That's going to be the title. Where's it going to grab the rating? It's going to grab it from rating, right? Where's it going to grab the year? It's going to grab it, right, from the view, right? And the plot, notice that it's very object-oriented, right? And plot. I have the new movie. I have the new movie instance, right? And now I'm going to add it to the array. Right? I'm just going to say scope movies. That's our array, right? I'm going to add it. I'm going to say push the new movie. See that? Right? So let's try it. Let's try it. So I'm just going to type stuff here. I'm going to get plus. It went to the alert, and then it got added to the bottom. Right? I didn't have to ask the view to re-render. I didn't have to do anything. Right? Remember, there's a double binding. Whatever happens when one happens, let's remove the alert. Right. So if I say here, inception. What year was that? 13? Really? That old? Oh, wow. I think it was R, right? Whatever. Inception, there it is, right? And I can still remove, right? I can remove. That makes sense? Everybody okay? All right. Let's see, what else would I want to do? Yes?
Why can't we directly add the movie object in the array?
Good question. Good question. Look what would happen. Right? What if I just do this? Okay. All right. So what happens here is this is what? This is bound to what? It's bound to these 4 input fields. Right. So what you're saying, right, is that you are adding a reference to that object of that input field. Right. So let's do it. I add it. It adds it. Right. Whatever happens here, right? They're bound. Right? These are references. Whatever happens, you've added a reference to that object, right? And whatever happens to that object happens to the object, and the whole thing gets re-rendered. Okay? So I'm creating a brand new instance, right? That has the same data, right? So they're not bound, right? Right. So I can't add anymore because I'm just adding the same reference to the same thing. Okay? So it has to be a brand new instance. Okay? New movie. Typically, I'm using here the literals. This is a little syntax to be able to instantiate new objects in JavaScript. You can instead use a full-blown class, right? A JavaScript class with a constructor that you can pass it values. It creates a new instance, right? And then pass that instance here, right? You can do that as well. Okay. Let's save that. So here, these are brand new instances. They have absolutely nothing to do with one another. Okay. All right. All right. So what else would I want to do? Well, I would want to be able to edit movies, right? I want to be able to say, oh, this movie I misspelled it, right? I want to be able to click on it, right? Perhaps use the same form, update it, right, and then just put it back in the model, right? So let's do that. Right. So one thing that I need to do is first select, right? Select the movie that I want to edit, right? So what I'm going to do, excuse me, next to the remove movie, I'll add like a selector, right? That allows me to select that one movie, right? So it'll be another it'll be another button, right? And it will be select movie, right? Select movie, and it won't be danger. Maybe it'll be warning, but I think that's yellow or orange. I forget. And for the glyphicon, I'm going to use the pencil, right? Because you're editing. You're editing, and I'll just put this here, warning, and let's see what it looks like now. Let's re-render. So I have those 2 buttons there, right? And if I click on that, I like to be able to select. So I need an event handler over here. An event handler. I'll say scope.select movie is function the movie that I want to that I want to edit, right? And so what I can do here, it'll say I can feed who? I want to put it where? I want to put it in this form, right? And what model is it using? It's using the movie model, right? Right. Those are called movie. So what I can do here. First, well, first, let's see if we could have the movie here, right? Let's alert movie.title. Let's see if that works, right? So if I click on here, there it is, Avatar, right? If I click here, Star Wars 7, right? So yes, I am getting that movie instance, right? So I can feed it. I can feed it to scope.movie. Oh, scope, sorry. Scope.movie equal the movie. Right, equal the movie. If I reference and I click here, notice that it populates the front end, right? Populates the form. See that? And notice that because it's a reference, whatever I do to the input field, right, happens to the actual object. Right? There's no need for clicking on an update. It is already being modified in the object, right? If I click here, right, I get Star Trek, and it modifies Star Trek, right? Right. It's references. It knows what movies are referenced by who, right? And it updates the model directly, right? There's no need to click on an OK. Perhaps we want an OK or a checkbox, right? At least to what? To maybe notify the server, right? And say, oh, the model has changed. Here's a new model, updated and synchronized with the database, perhaps. Yes? Because right now all these changes are happening in the front end, right? And the server is never being notified about any of these changes. So let's add a checkbox just in case, in preparation for, right, us being able to connect this with the server, right? Well, also these pluses and deletions and removals, they also would have to be notified and synchronized with the database, right? Where the model that we have in the client would have to be synchronized with the model in the back end. So we have select. So presumably we want like a checkbox saying, yes, we're done updating, notify the server. So this is maybe update movie, and we'll use as a glyphicon, we'll use a checkbox, which I'll put here. And I'll use here as a primary blue, primary. There it is, right? And why is that? Okay. Right, and so there should be a function called update movie. Scope.update movie function. Right, and this will be responsible for pushing any updates to the database. Or we could have it so that it saves implicitly, right? Maybe as we move from one field to the next, or when you lose focus, right? Then you would update it, or every so often, every 5 seconds or something, right? And here we can do alert and print out the new title, right? New title. Right, so if we click on Star Trek and we change that to be Star Trek 45, and we do OK, there it is, Star Trek 45. Right, so the model is being modified, right, and we can send it back to the server. Does this make sense? All right. Okay. So this is all data. This is all data that lives locally on our machine, right? What we might want to be able to do is access data in some server, in some database. But we don't have a server. We don't have a database of our own anyway. We don't have a server of our own. But we do have a server that has movies, don't we? IMDb has lots of movies. Did we do that exercise with jQuery? We did that, right? Okay, let's see how we would do something similar, but using Angular. All right, let's see. Right. The API, I believe, was here. Right, this is the API, right? And there was down below, there was an example of what these URLs might look like, right? And movies, blah, blah. Here it is, right? There it is. And the same problem we had last week about JSON versus JSON-P, we're going to have the same problem here, right? So we have to use the JSON-P version if we're looking for avatar, and we do search. We're going to have to use this, right? So let's copy this link, copy the link. Okay. So to be able to connect to a server, we're going to have to use another magical service, right? Not only the scope service. The scope service allows us to connect to our view, right? That we're responsible for. There's another service that allows us to connect to networks, right? And that service is called HTTP. Okay. Let's print it just to make sure that indeed we have it. We can say alert HTTP. From here, let's refresh. And yes, it is a function. There it is. It's there. Actually, you know what? Let's do this in a separate exercise, right? So let's go back to our experiments and let's copy this and let's paste it here. So I'll do this 0, 20. And 0, 20, I'm going to copy the movies app, right? I'm going to leave it the way it is, right? And I'm going to make a copy. And so this is movies app 20. How's that? 20. Okay? Right? So my 20, right? My HTML 20, right? It's going to call movies app 20 instead. Yes? Right? It's going to be a different version. The other one did everything in the front end. This one is going to add the ability to go out to a service, right? To an HTTP network. Okay. All right. So let's open up movies app 20s. Right. We already have HTTP. Very good. So let's play around with HTTP. Let's see if we can hit that URL that we copied. Right. So it works somewhat the same, very similar to jQuery's AJAX. Right. The syntax is a little bit different. So it's HTTP. As opposed to an AJAX, you have to say, you give it the URL, and then you say the success, and then, whether it's JSON, JSON-P. In this one, if it's a plain old get, right, that you're requesting JSON, you use .get. Okay. If you're requesting something that is not JSON, like JSON-P, you have to explicitly say, I want a JSON-P request, right? So they break it up into function calls. Okay. Okay. And then in the function, you can tell it the URL. No, that's not the URL. I copy the wrong URL. Copy. What? Copy link address. I'll paste it in there. There it is, right? And in here, once this occurs, it's going to be the same way, right? It's going to be asynchronous. It's not going to block. It's going to be a non-blocking method invocation. Usually methods block, right? Until they say return. Here, it does not block, right? What it does, it comes back immediately, right? But it registers a callback and says, whenever you're done, call me back at this function, right? And the way we register is through a success call. We call success, and we provide a function, right? We provide the function that we want to use. We want to register to be invoked when this is done, right? And in that function, they're going to pass us the response, right? Saying this is the response from the server. Okay? And we're going to do an alert response. All right, let's see if that works. So this is 0, 20. Maybe. Maybe. Yes? No? It failed? Oh. Let's see what happened. console. Blah, blah, blah. On-cut references, my films, blah, blah, blah. Not defined. The link work? Yeah, the link works. It's a good link. Oh, you know what? It's waiting for a function called my API films. Probably. Let's see. So let's create a function. See if this is it. Response. So instead of here, see if that works. Uncut reference error Maya is not defined. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Maybe it's declared out here. Object. Okay, we do get an object. We do get an object. Right? But why didn't it work here? See if we can configure it. AngularJS JSON-P. JSON-P. Usage, blah, blah, blah. Find JSON-P. JSON-P. Configuration. Optional. Config. Okay, what are the config? You see? JSON-P. Sample button, blah, blah, blah. Greeting, callback, JSON, callback, blah, 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 da, 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 da. Invalid, status. In the script, scope, method, cache, template, function, yada, yada, yada. Error. Let me see. Select JSON-P, blah, 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 da, 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 da. It says button fetch calls this one, calls fetch. There it is. And then what? It uses, this is the ng model method. And method can be get or JSON-P. Okay. ng click, update model. And what URL is it using? Invalid, blah, blah, blah. And what's the URL that they're using? Scope URL. Okay, what is the scope URL? There it is. Input, blah, 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 URL. Oh, okay, so you have to type in the URL? Really? Okay, so hello. So can we copy that? Let's see. Copy link. Does this work? And I want JSON-P. Get JSON-P. Oh no, fetch, sorry. 404, it failed. It failed. Why is it failing? Let me just look at this for a second. Where'd it go? Oh, go back. Can you configure the name of the function? Can you configure the name of the function? JSON callback. JSON callback. Oh, does it support that? I don't know if it supports that. Callback. I don't know if our server supports that. Let me put it here. Callback. Let's see if that works. Refresh. Did it work? Wait. I have a success. Dot success. sets function function response console log response. Let's see if that works. Refresh. Oh, we get an object. Yes, that worked. All right. We have an object, and there's only one object. Let's see. There it is. It has a plot, right? The rating, everything, right? It's got the year. We can change this so that we get more than one, right? So we can filter and say a limit and say that I want 10. I want 10. So let's reload that. There it is. So we got 10 elements, right? So what do we want to do with this? Let's see. What can we do with this? Wait a minute. Let's look at this. What do we have in these objects? Let's look at these objects. If you look at the objects, some of the fields that we already have in our model are already here. Let's see. Plot. We already have plot, don't we, in our model? We have rating. We have what else? We have year. What else do we have? Title. We have title. Is there a title here? Where? Title. Well, guess what? We could just say scope.movies response. Right? So that when it comes back, look at that, right? We got the data, the response from a server, and it fills everything. It fills everything perfectly, right? The plot tomorrow never dies. Oh yeah, we looked at that last week, right? That was a weird name, right? It's not a real movie, right? Agent James Bond Avatar. Okay. So it started off with a hard-coded movie array, right? Which we don't need anymore, right? Because where are we getting it from? We're getting it from a server, right? There's no point in working with this hard-coded array, right? In your projects, you're going to be getting it from your own, Node.js or IIS server or whatever, wherever you're hosting your service, right? Wherever you're connecting to a database, this is how you would get it, right? So what is it? 2 lines of code? 2 lines of code to just fetch the data, right? And associate it to a front end repeater that just renders this, right? Very, very easy. Okay. We can remove stuff from here, right? Because again, this lives in our local data model. One thing that we might want to do is we might want to be able to search stuff here. Instead of being one thing, we want to be able to search it. So this rendering probably we don't want to do it right away. We want to do it as you type, right? You type and say, yes, search for this, right? And then update the model, right? So typically we want to wrap this. We want to wrap this inside of a function, inside of an event handler that says scope dot render movies, right? Search movies. Search movies. So this is a function, right? And just put this in there. So only when you search for movies, then you would call this, right? And what do we get? Where do we get the actual name or the title of the movie? Well, presumably, hopefully, the UI declares a search by title, a field, right? And that's the title that we want to use. So var title is equal to that, and that title we're going to use here to parameterize our search. Make sense? So let's do that. Let's link this to the UI, right? Right now it's not tied to the UI. So there should be an input field that allows me to type the title. So let's see. Let's have here an input field of class form control that has I'm going to tie it to the model in the controller, and it's ng model. What do we call it? Search by title, right? Okay. And beyond that, I want a button that I click and you search, right? So we're going to have a button here of class btn primary, and search. right? And when this is clicked, I want to notify the controller, ng click, what is it called? Search movies. Search movies is going to invoke that. Make sense? Right? So now, if I refresh this, we have the search. It's empty, right? If we look for avatar, we search, and it works for avatar. Or if I want to search for Star Wars, it looks for Star Wars, right? So we have a very simple search. That's very ugly the way it's rendered like that. So instead, we're going to use a bootstrap button group. A button group allows you to group together input fields and buttons. Where is it? There it is. So here you can put labels and input fields or buttons or radio buttons or checkboxes. Here it is. Go. Right. So let's do this. Right. So let's copy the text for this. So it's this one. Input group. And let's close the input group. Copy. And I'm going to replace this. I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to tie this input field to the model. Oops, what happened? Oh. ng model. So it's going to be this input field, right? And that button is going to be calling this event handler. Right? I'm going to throw away the old one. Right? Refresh. There it is. So there's a go at the end, right? So this still works, right? Star Trek. Go. It looks for Star Trek. Make sense? We might want to add an image here. Images are peculiar, right? They are peculiar because we might want to add because as you're iterating in the model, right? You need to add it in the template, right? You need to add it even though there's nothing there to render. You have an img, right? And if you give a source, what source are you going to give it? Because this has not rendered yet, right? And the browser is going to complain. It's going to say, wait a minute, the source you're giving me is for an image that doesn't exist, right? So the browser is going to complain. It's going to throw out a whole bunch of console errors, right? So that source, what we're going to do is says we're not going to give it a source, right? We're going to dynamically generate the attribute source when we have a source, right? When we actually have images, right? And we have images, don't we? It's in the poster, right? The poster has an image, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to add next to the title, we're going to add or maybe next to the plot, we'll add a small thumbnail. How's that? We have the plot here. Here's a plot. And right before the plot, we're going to put a small thumbnail. So this is going to be IMG. It's an image. We don't have a source. So instead, we're going to use an ng source. ng source. Meaning, I don't have a source to give you right now. This attribute will be inserted dynamically later when there is a source. Okay? When the following expression is evaluated, movie dot what is it? Is it poster? I don't remember. Poster, maybe. Okay. Notice that poster we don't have it in our model, right? In our original model, it wasn't there. Where's this poster coming from? If this is all from the array coming that we're downloading from the server, right? Let's look at that. Let's reload this avatar. That didn't work. Why didn't it work? What happened? IMG poster source. What is the console? Blah blah blah. Failed to load. Movie poster. Movie is it not in our model? I'm sorry? Oh, is that the name? Okay, URL, and then capital poster? No, that didn't work either. Let me look at the object, actually. Let's look at the object. Let's look at the network, what's coming through. Let me see, avatar. Avatar, let's erase this. Let's see what's coming through. It's a preview. The response. What'd you say it was? Poster, right? Ah! What the heck? It's this one, right? Let me go here, new. Whatever, JavaScript, sure. Poster. URL poster. Is that what I did? Let me try it again. Yeah, it is. Interesting. URL poster. Wait, does it have to be in curly brackets? Maybe. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, it has to be in curly brackets. All right. Yeah, the reason I was confused is that usually you see this, right? You only need to use curly brackets, right? When you are surrounded by everything that is literal, right? So you're not inside of a tag. You're not an attribute, right? You're just flowing with a free-form text, yes? So you need to be able to distinguish between what's text and what's not text, yes? Over here, notice that we're not using curly brackets, right? And the reason we're not using curly brackets is that we're being used in an attribute, which is an ng attribute. Right? It's an ng attribute, and it says, okay, well, it's an ng attribute. You don't have to tell me already, right, again, that I am in the ng world, right? I'm in the Angular world. So I thought this was going to work the same because it's an ng source, it's an Angular attribute, right? It should have understood that this is it's an expression, right? For some reason it didn't. I wonder why. Anyway, we have the images. We could make it smaller. Obviously, we can say maybe width, maybe 50. Avatar. Okay, there it is. So we have an image, and we could make it flow. Maybe we can make it page inspect. We can do. Here's the image. We can do flow, maybe left, and maybe do a margin right, margin, or just margin, maybe 5 pixels. Okay, so it looks a little prettier, right? So we can say, this is class poster, right? And we can copy that style so that it looks somewhat presentable. Style, and this is, what is the poster? Right? So that now when I search for something, Star Wars, search, Star Wars 1977, there they are, right? The thumbnails, Star Wars Episode 1, Star Wars Clone Wars. Where's the new one? 2016, Untitled Star Wars Project. What? That's not it, right? 2015, the end of this year, right? It's coming out, right? Where is it? Oh, is that it? Yeah. The Force Awakens. There it is. Okay, there's no poster yet for it, right? So ideally what you want to be able to do is put this and maybe say that these are my favorites, right? And you would maintain a separate, right? A separate place where you would store which ones are your favorites, right? And the only things that you would need to store is the ID, right? The ID, so that tomorrow, if you want to come back and look at the details, right? You can always fetch that one particular movie, right, with the ID, right? So let's look at this. So let's add a button, right, at the end here, so that it allows me to say that this is my favorite. All right, so let's do here button ng click add to favorites. Okay, the movie class, and we'll say button. We have warning. We have what? Info, I think. Info, yeah. And we want to have there like a star that you can click on that star, right? So let's fetch a star here from the top. And components, well, we'll have a star. Where is it? A star. There it is, right? So let's put that in there. And when you favorite, so add to my favorite, we're going to have an event handler here. Why is this indented that way? We're going to have event handler is going to say scope dot add to favorite as a function, right? And the movie that you're adding, and we're going to add it to some array of favorite movies, right? So presumably there'll be a scope of favorite movies, right? Push the movie that is our favorite, right? And we don't have it yet, right? We'll start with empty. So favorite movies will be empty at first, right? And we'll just push to it, right? Again, all this is hard-coded, but eventually this is all going to be from the server, right? What are you going to do? Presumably this might be your profile, right? And for a profile, you fetch the data model for that user, and part of that model is their favorite movies, yes? Embedded in that profile. And that favorite movies at first might be empty, but you might be adding to this, right? And then you're going to push it back to the server, so when you come back tomorrow, you can download what your favorites are and re-render the whole thing again. Make sense? Right? Okay. So let's see. Now, to render this, perhaps what we might want to do is actually we should make this a separate exercise, right? Let's make this a separate exercise. Let's stop here. Let's copy this. This will be 30, right? And it'll be a separate one. So this will be 30, 0, 30. Okay, so here's 30. In 30, it maps to app 30 here, right? Okay. So we don't need this anymore, and we don't need this anymore. Okay. Right, so in here, we're going to have an empty favorite movie, and we're going to be adding as you click on a particular movie. Yes? Yes. Because you're interacting with the UI, right? And you're clicking, dragging, typing, you're doing things, right? Here we want to listen for the click on that button, right? So we're creating an event handler that if you click on the add favorite, right, then I'm going to react and says, oh, I need to remember that this is their favorite, right? So what I'm going to do is that whatever movie you click on as your favorite, we already have a delete, right? Remember, we have a delete, we have an edit, and we have event handlers for both buttons. Here, we're also taking an action. What are we doing? We're storing in a separate array that these are your favorite movies. Okay, right? So we're going to keep a separate. So I might search for Star Trek, for Star Wars, for Avatar, and says, "Ooh, I like this one." Then I search again, right? It says, "Ooh, I like that one," right? So my favorite movies is going to be a subset of all the movies possible, right? So I'll have 2, 3, 4, 5 favorite movies of thousands of movies that I might have searched. Okay, so I'm going to keep it in a separate data model, in a separate array. At the end of what? Of the URL? Oh, I'm sorry. This callback. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. So the standard, the standard, the JSON-P standard hack, right, is that you can provide a name for the callback, right? If you remember when we use this URL all by itself without the callback, right, it came back with a function call, right? And that function call was my API films, I think it was, wasn't it? Right. So that's a standard. If you don't tell me what the name of your function is going to be, it assumes a default name for the function call, right? And one way to do it is that, well, I didn't tell you, so you're coming up with this function. So I will create that function locally on my domain, right, in my JavaScript, and you will call that function, right? Because that's what's being downloaded, right? What's downloading? Just plain text, right? Which that plain text happens to be what? A function call. And what happens to JavaScript when it gets downloaded? It executes immediately, right? So if you're downloading something that is a function call, it's going to look for that function. It's going to try and call it. If it's not there, it's going to die, right? It's just not going to find it. It's not going to be able to call it. But if you do have a function named whatever's being downloaded, it will call that function. And that's how it passes you data. Because in the text file, right, what do? You call the function, and as an argument to that function is all the data that it was going to download anyway. Make sense? Right? And that's how it gets around the security issue, right? Because the browsers don't mind downloading text, don't mind downloading images, right? They don't mind downloading PDFs, right? They don't. So that's how they get around the text, the security issue, right? But the standard, the JSON-P standard, is that you can provide a name for that function, right? And you can provide the name for that function by providing it as an argument, as an attribute, as a parameter, right? You say, hey, don't use your default name, use this name. Okay, so now that it's called JSON callback, if we look at this, right, we look at the elements, right, and we do the query again. Let's go to the console. Let's clear it and let's search for something. Star Wars, when we search again, and we go to the network, right? Notice that what it's using, right? It's using a name that is being passed by Angular. Angular is telling you use this name. Angular is on the fly generating a function name. jQuery does the same thing. jQuery generates a very weird name. It's a jQuery 1235777xyz, something, something very unique, right? It generates a function on the fly, right? And says use this name, right, for the function, right? And Angular knows what the function name that it passed it, so it creates on the fly a function to receive that call. Okay. And so it calls that particular name, right? Right. So this is a function name that Angular came back, made up on the fly. All right. All right. What else? Is that okay? Yeah. All right. All right. So notice that I'm adding movies to my favorite. Yes. But where I should be able to display those movies, right? So this is my search at the bottom. So I'm going to have this my search, right? I'm going to have this H2 search movies at the bottom, and above I'm going to have H2 favorites, favorite movies, which at the beginning they're empty, right? And I'm going to have T-body. And this is going to look very, very similar to my TR here, right? So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy my TR repeat. I'm just going to copy this again. It's going to look very, very similar. Right? T-body. Why? What happened here? Oh, but I didn't copy the TR maybe? TR. So start here, go all the way down here. Copy. Paste. Okay, that worked. For now, we're just going to display the movie, the title, the poster, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be an array. Yes, it's going to be an array. But my array, it's a different data model, right? Where am I putting it? In favorite movies, right? So this is going to iterate over favorite movies. See that? It's going to iterate over favorite movies. Poster, same thing. Select movie. We're not going to be selecting movies here, right? We're not going to be doing that. We're not going to be adding to favorites because it's already in favorites. Yes. We are going to be removing movie, but we're going to be calling a different event handler. We're going to call remove favorite movie. Okay. Right. So let's render that. Let's see if this works. So below we can search, right? Ooh, what happened to our favorite movie? Oh, 30. Oh, 30. There it is. So avatar, and I search, right? And there I have a star here. See? So if I click on, no, not Airbender. Avatar 2. Notice that it came down, so it must have added it. Okay, there it is. Avatar, blah, 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 sequel, right? Sort of works. What happened? Why didn't it work perfectly? Oh, because first of all, I didn't paint it, right? So class, table, and table striped. And what else? Movie rating, poster. Why doesn't this work? Sequel to 2009 phenomenon. Oh, there is no image, right? There is no poster. So let's add one that it does have poster. Let's click here. Let's go up. So yeah, so it works, right? It works. So let's refresh this and let's look for Star Wars. Right. So let's add. This is my favorite. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. Right. Let's go up. All right. So notice that it's being added to the favorite. Right. If I search for something else, Lord of the Rings. Okay, there it is. So I like that one. I like that one, and I like that one. What? What is it? Oh, that's not it. Okay, there it is. So there's 3, the Lord of the Rings. So notice I'm searching and I'm adding this, right? Obviously, this would be going to the server, right, to store all this, right? And we can remove it, right? So to remove it, it looks very similar. We already have a function, remove favorite movie. So we can have here scope dot remove favorite movie. That's going to be a function, the actual movie that I want to remove, and I'm going to find the index. The index is going to be from the scope of my favorite movies. I'm going to find the index of that movie. And if I have the index, I can then splice it out and say scope.favoritemovies.splice that index 1. Right. So if I search Pirates of the Caribbean, is that how you spell it? Am I missing double R? Really? No. Oh, yes. Oh, it's double B. It's double B. Wow, the search engine is pretty smart. Okay. So favorite, whatever, right? Okay. And hopefully this will also be able to remove. Yeah, it removes. Right? It removes. Okay. So that what's missing here is being able to save, right? To save this. So for instance, one of the things that I would like to be able to do is click on one of them and see the details, right? Like the actors and the directors, and go to like a details page, right? So let's get started on that. So this is favorite movies. This is H2. So I'm going to start a new experiment. Oops. So I'll call this 040, and this is 040. 040. Let's close that. So we want 040 and 040. So here we have 040. Right? So let's add a button here to go and see the details, right? So the details, maybe we'll use, let's see, what can we use here? Maybe like a preview or open or something, right? So we'll click here and says preview movie or details. Get details, and the class is that. Okay, and that's danger. So this will be primary. So primary, and we need a place to put that, right? So let's put a placeholder for this, and let's add here h2. Obviously, these would have to live in separate pages, right? So this is what is it? Details. And the details. Let's have maybe h3. We're going to have the title. So this is details title. Right? Let's just have the title. I don't think we have enough time to do everything else. So the details page, the details movie, is going to go and be an event handler. Let's say scope dot details page is going to be a function of the movie, and that movie we're going to need the ID, right? We're going to need the ID because the URL, there's a URL at the top, right? That if we send to this URL the IMDb value, right? If we give it, there it is, IMDb, and then when we know the ID, right? We can retrieve the object that represents this movie. There's no need to store any of this in the database, right? The only thing we might want to store in the database is just maybe the title, the ID, and maybe the poster, right? Enough to do what? Enough to render my favorite movies, right? So that I can click on this something and then go see the details. Make sense, right? So yeah, so we know the URL. We know the URL. Where is it? There it is, right? So I'm going to copy that. So in that details movie, we're going to do an HTTP call, right? HTTP, JSON P, and then give it the URL, right? Give it the URL. We'll need that callback. We need that callback. Let's go find that callback. There it is. Callback. Go at the end, and I'm going to say paste the callback. Oops, we need ampersand callback. There it is. And then success, right? And then the function, and the movie that comes back. That's the movie that comes back. Oops, there it is. And what else do we need? Let's see. The IMDb. The IMDb. Where's the ID going to come from? It's part of the movie, no? It's in the movie. All right, so we can replace this with movie dot. Oh crap! What is it called? I think it's ID IMDb, right? I think, right? Paste that. And what do we do here? We're gonna match it against the model back in the client called details. I'm going to say details or scope details. Scope details. I'm going to map it with the movie that comes back. All right, so let's play around with that. Let's see, where is it? 40. Time to go. 40. So let's see. Let's look for avatar. And so this is my favorite. Okay, it's in my favorite. I want to preview. Didn't work. What did it not like? Console, unexpected token, callbacks, Angular, blah, blah, blah. Let's clear that. Search here. And callback, AngularJS P, that works. Oh, maybe this doesn't support JSON P. Wait, let me see. JSON. Oh, maybe we have to tell it what format we want it. Okay, yeah, I believe we have to tell the format. Okay, so format. I guess we need to say format equal JSON P. Try it again. Refresh. Let's see, avatar. Click. So I put it in my favorite, and I say preview. Avatar. There it is. Right. So this went. So there's a. So this is going to be put what in your database, right? This comes from IMDb's database. This comes from your database, right? And you put it in your database. Next time you log in, you query for your profile. Your profile comes back with your favorites, right? If you want to go see your details, you go back to the IMDb to retrieve the details, which includes all the actors, right? All the plot, the long plot, right? Any the writers, the ratings, everything, right? The previews, the comments, everything would be there. None of that would be stored in your database. The only thing you really need is what? The IMDb ID. You see that? That's all you really need. All right, let's leave it here. Hopefully this was helpful.